No? I just was kind of waiting for a cue to make sure everybody's in here. And started. Well, that's fine. Go right ahead. Good to go? I think we are ready to begin. Let me welcome you all to the Wall of Fame Awards ceremony. Great to see so many of you here. My name is Mike Tronson. I'm honored to be your Master of Ceremonies for the proceedings this evening. And as many of you already know, we are here to honor our Friends of Education and outstanding alumni. And at this time, just want to tell you a little bit about those folks who we are here to honor tonight. Now, the Friends of Education Award, of course, recognizes an individual, or in this case, individuals, or organization for their distinguished service to the district and its students. The Outstanding Alumni Award recognizes a graduate of the Beaver Dam Unified School District for his or her exceptional accomplishments and for setting the standards for our students. And of course, our Friends of Education honorees tonight. I've known these folks a long time. I think everybody has, to be honest with you here. I moved to town in 1997, and I don't remember exactly when or where, but I met you guys right off the bat somewhere. I know that for a fact. Probably the parking lot of Piggly Wiggly or Quick Trip or something like that. Chuck and Jeannie Stungle. They epitomize, give them a round of applause, will you please? They epitomize what it means to be a friend of education. Their dedication and commitment to the youth of Beaver Dam, unwavering. They are strong advocates for children. Their involvement in community organizations and activities are examples of that commitment. Their involvement includes coordinating and organizing the National Night Out event, helping with fundraising for the Beaver Dam Scholarship Foundation, in addition to volunteering with the Playground Movement, where they also serve as board members. Chuck's leadership in a community program led to organizing a community drive for personal care items that were distributed to schools for their comfort closets. Chuck and Jeannie understand the value of positive influences and have mentored numerous children over the years. They continue to make a difference. So once again, please give a round of applause for our Friends of Education honorees, Chuck and Jeannie Stungle. We are also here, of course, to honor our outstanding alumnus, James Campbell. Give him a round of applause. He is a 1980 graduate of this institution. He received his BA from Yale University in 1984 and his MA from the University of Colorado in 1995. After college, he began a career in advertising. However, his passion for writing and adventure led him to pursue a career more aligned with his values. Early in his career, James wrote for Rolling Stone magazine and provided articles as a freelance author to National Geographic, Field and Stream, among others. His adventures to some of the most remote regions of the world have provided the inspiration for his writing. And his dedication and commitment to telling a story leads readers on journeys and portrays real-life struggles and ordeals in each of his award-winning and highly acclaimed books. The Final Frontiersman, The Ghost Mountain Boys, The Color of War, Braving It, and upcoming book, Heart of the Jaguar, are testaments to James' wide range of interests that highlight personal struggles, inequalities, conservancy, and parenting. His television production career includes developing and producing television series for Discovery and the History Channel. And his book, The Final Frontiersman, was the inspiration for the Discovery series The Last Alaskans, which ran for 4 seasons. He also produced a series, Great Lake Warriors, for the History Channel, and that followed the challenges of tugboat crews. His passion for storytelling continues as he pursues adventures while also keeping himself grounded in his small-town Wisconsin roots. Another round of applause for James Campbell. Before we get into the formal part of our honoring our recipients here, I would like to introduce any past recipients who are present. I'm told that these folks, I think, are all here. I saw most of them. I'm going to ask you, when I call your name, to please stand and be recognized. Bev Beolake, 2022 Friend of Education. I saw Bev. Yeah, there she is, right down front. Bev. Yep. And Jim Flynn, I think Jim is here somewhere, 2013 Friend of Education. Where's Jim? How about Laura Gorel, 2020 Friend of Education? Laura, stand up. There you go. Tom Heffron, 2018 Friend of Education. Tom is here somewhere, right? There he is. Let's see, Barb Link is here, 2018 Friend of Education. He's waving. There we go. Roger Knoll, is Roger here? There he is. Roger Knoll, 2003 Friend of Education. Kay Stelflug, is Kay here? Yep, there she is, right there. 2002 Friend of Education. Is there anybody else here that I missed? Any award recipients from the past? Would you stand up if I don't see anybody? Oh, that's good. They gave me good information. All right, on with our ceremony here. We're going to move now to, again, talk more about our 2024 Friends of Education. And to present Chuck and Janie Stungel, I would like to ask Carol Trentham to please come up to the podium. Carol?
I am so excited to be here, to be able to present this award, especially on Teacher Appreciation Week. And our 2 recipients combined have a total of 62 years in education. Way to go. As an educator myself, I am big on definitions. I found that there were 22 qualities of a friend when I was looking up the definition of a friend, and also a high-powered definition of the word education. Just included in the definition of a friend are these qualities: living with integrity, trustworthy and honest, respect for personal boundaries, encouragement, making time for you, patience, going deeper than the surface level. And in the definition of education, we look at the transmission of habits, ideals, hopes, expectations, standards, and opinions from one generation to the next. So we're going to combine these 2 definitions, and while I'm going to tell you some of the reasons that these 2 individuals are receiving this award, and think of these definitions. But I also have an assignment for you. I want you, while I am relaying some of the reasons why they're receiving this award, I want you to calculate in your mind how many students and how many community members that these 2 have touched. So, are you ready? First, we've heard that they were in charge of the National Night Out, helped run sports camps, athletic tutoring, hoops monitoring, establishing a book room, working concession stands, refereeing, co-president of the Washington PTO, painting at the community center, president of the Citizens of the Police Academy. How you doing on your calculations here? Keep adding. Member of the Fire Department Auxiliary, crossing guards, then and now, bike rodeos, school Olympics, organized and advocated for new track construction, delivered Meals on Wheels, Scholarship Foundation Board, members of the playground movement as volunteers and as board members. And the leadership Beaver Dam was that project where they collected huge donations that were given to Church Health Services, and then those Church Health Services distributed them to the school. Building food gardens, very active in Booster Club. Officers in the Dodge County area, retired educators. And that is just not everything that they've done. So, if your answer to my assignment is, I can't calculate all of that, they just keep adding up, and it keeps going on. The two of them certainly are the dynamic duo, and it's with a great pleasure that I introduce to you the winners and wonderful great addition to the Wall of Fame, Chuck and Jeannie Stangl.
Great job, Carol. Thank you. Jeannie looks a little bit more concerned that I'm about to talk than Chuck, so I don't know what that means. Don't worry, my airtime's seriously limited because I'm going to yield the floor to you in just a moment. But before I present you with this plaque, I think what Carol shared was a lot of the what that you guys did. But I think what's even more amazing is how you did it. You bring a light and a spirit to what you do, and it's remarkable. It not only uplifts and adds value to the people that you're impacting, but the people that observe it and the adults. So thank you for being a wonderful role model for all of us.
I limited it to him to 3 pages. No.
Several times. It's an absolute privilege and honor to have been selected to receive the Beaver Dam Wall of Fame. Friends of Education Award. Jean and I would like to thank the Friends of Education Committee for selecting us for this award, and to those who nominated us. We are truly honored to receive this recognition. We have always felt a strong connection to the Beaver Dam community, which led us to become involved with various local organizations and their causes. Whenever there was a need, we tried to be there to lend a helping hand and serve in any way that we could. We rarely say the word no, which at times can be challenging. You should see what our calendar looks like. But in the long run, being involved has provided us with amazing opportunities to serve alongside community members. Local organizations that we were heavily involved with were the Playground Movement, National Night Out, Meals on Wheels, the Beaver Dam Scholarship Foundation, Church Health Services, Second Harvest Food Pantry, And we were even on the stage at the Beaver Dam Area Community Theater painting sets and spaces in their new location. And we also were involved with the Beaver Dam Citizens Police Academy. Education has always been an important part of our lives. During our time in the district, we enjoyed helping students with their academics. Whether it was study groups at the high school, tutoring after school, or hosting the infamous test correction parties and tutoring student athletes in our home, we believed that every student was valued and could succeed. Jeannie's Hoops mentoring program was instrumental in pairing members of the boys basketball team with the students at Lincoln School to combine learning and sports. Team members would come to Lincoln School to help in the classroom. There was even a Lincoln Lightning cheering section in the North Gym of the high school. In the summer, we had concrete league at our home for the Beaver Dam boys basketball program. Games were played in our driveway that had half-court markings painted on it. The evenings always ended with everyone invited into our home for some intense N64 Nintendo games and Jeannie's Rice Krispie treats. N64 and I didn't get along very well. And when it was time, we always played game, we had 2 teams of 2, so 4 people played. So when it was my time to be on somebody's team, the other 3 guys, they would say, "Not Chuck." And whoever said "Not Chuck" last had me as their partner first. And of course, that was a guaranteed loss. So I worked my way through everybody. Our message to others is don't be afraid to donate your time to activities and organizations that you are passionate about. You will never know how many lives you are impacting by what you are doing. One more side note, yesterday my wife and I were out shopping around Madison. We were in Middleton, and we were at Jung's Garden Center looking for some plants. And the young man there working, started talking to us about what we were needing, and he looked at me and said, "Are you Mr. Stungle?" And here it was one of my former students from the charter school. And it was just amazing. It definitely touched me. As I always say, keep making a difference. Again, we thank you for this honor. Thank you.
One more round of applause for Chuck and Jeannie. And now we move to honor our 2024 Outstanding Alumnus. And at this time, to present our award winner, James Campbell, I'd like to invite Steve Kinsey and Jeff Campbell up to the podium to say a few words. Give them a round of applause.
Thanks, Mike. I don't know how you follow the Stungles after that. So it is with great pleasure that I have this opportunity to present Mr. James Campbell, a proud 1980 graduate of Beaver Dam High School, as this year's Outstanding Alumni recipient. I've known Jim since I was a young kid. Now, when I say known, that is, I knew who Jim was. He didn't know who I was. Jim was the star football player from the 1979 Golden Beaver State Championship team, and as a 10-year-old football junkie, we all knew who they were, but as I said, they didn't know us, okay? I got to know Jim later in life when I was a high school player. Jim and his younger brother, Jeff, would often come back and work out with us as we were preparing for our high school season, and they were preparing for their college seasons. More than just working out with us, they gave us advice on different things like position technique, strategy, and more importantly, things like how to be a leader on and off the field. Jim has led a remarkable life, to say the least. Captain of the state champion football team, starting linebacker at Yale University. Yes, Yale University. Okay? How many kids from Beaver Dam have gone to Yale? All right. These accomplishments in high school and college led to his induction into the Athletic Hall of Fame in 2015. After attempting to crack into the NFL, a dream that was ended by a knee injury, he entered the world of advertising, but soon found his passion for writing and embarked upon a career that would take him literally to opposite ends of the planet. Jim often wrote about the great outdoors. Mostly, he just loves to write about anything interesting, those out-of-the-box type of stories. These stories soon became books. To date, he has written 5 books, all of which have received awards and/or high praise by countless critics and reviews. His latest book is due out in November. Is that a good plug? Good plug for you right there? Yeah, there you go. Free, too. Free, all right, good, yeah. Jim's passion for storytelling also branched out into the media world. He helped produce 2 television series that garnered high critical acclaim and was broadcast across 2 major cable networks, History and Discovery Channel. Lastly, despite the many accomplishments that he has achieved, Jim is just a great guy. Though I haven't had many interactions with Jim over my lifetime, those that I did have were powerful. From what I've learned as I put his candidacy together is that Jim is well-grounded. He's a no-nonsense, down-to-earth type of guy who values family, seeks adventure, pushes limits as a way to grow, and cares about the world around him. The dude's nickname is Soup, and his email is Bog Moose. And that's proof alone that he's just a great guy who loves living a simple life in the real world. If there's a Hall of Fame for nice guys, Jim, along with his brother Jeff, are first ballot unanimous selection Hall of Famers. Speaking of Jeff, I welcome him to the podium to wrap up this introduction for Jim.
All right. Thank you very much, Stephen, for all your hard work, tireless work to put this together, and thanks for inviting me and letting me be a part of it as well. I have to admit, I can't call him James. That just is completely foreign to me. So he's referred to as Jimmy. Jimmy, this is an honor and a privilege to be part of, and what an honor it is for you to be inducted for your contributions to the world of adventure and discovery. In addition to my letter of endorsement, I was tasked to appeal to 2 of his daughters and Elizabeth's daughters to see if they would write letters of endorsement as well. And they were both beautiful letters, one of which was written by their eldest daughter, Aiden. And it's a beautiful letter and actually brought tears to my eyes, so I thought I'd share it here. Okay. A dreamer by nature, my dad has ventured to some of the world's most remote regions, the islands of Micronesia, the jungles of New Guinea, the Amazon rainforest, and the tundra of Alaska. In doing so, he's risked his life more times than my mom or grandmother would care to know. But to bring his characters to life, he believed he needed to follow in their footsteps. To understand the soldiers who hiked across New Guinea during World War II, he decided to retrace their trail, though calling their path through swamps and precipitous ravines a route at all was generous. In the process of that month-long trek, he busted his knee and came home with malaria. But his boots-on-the-ground research won him the trust and respect of World War II veterans who'd served there. He approached writing about Alaska in the same way, spending 9 months in the bush living alongside his cousin, Haimo Korth, the last year-round resident of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, while working on his best-selling book, The Final Frontiersman. And then, inspired by Haimo's daughter's upbringing, he returned 10 years later to bring me, his 15-year-old daughter, to the Alaskan tundra, so that I too could learn to build a fire, fish for my supper, hunt and track, and embrace a life far removed from our modern one. My dad could write from the comfort of his chair in the living room, but what gives his writing power are the details drawn from lived experience, the sound of cracking ice on the river, a jaguar's roar, the star navigators singing love songs. It's why every prominent big cat biologist in Brazil knows his name, why our home is filled with shell necklaces from Micronesia and New Guinea, and why growing up on our answering machine was always full of long heartfelt messages from World War II veterans who'd read his work. Braving It, the book my dad wrote about our experience in Alaska together, begins with a quote from the author Hodding Carter. There are two lasting bequests we can hope to give our children. One of these is roots, the other wings. My dad taught my sisters and me to be bold, dream big, and always take the road less traveled, even if it meant bushwhacking. But he never wanted us to overlook the beauty of home. There's the oft-repeated cliche that if small town kids get out, they never come back. Despite all his travels, he chose to raise a family just 45 minutes from where he grew up in Beaver Dam. He'd show us pictures of Denali or the blue holes of Micronesia, and right next to it, dawn breaking in the Horicon Marsh, which he'd swear was just as pretty. His favorite color, he'll tell you, is the verdant green of a July cornfield, and he won't travel in the fall lest he miss morning duck hunt or watching the Packers game with my grandmother. My dad gave us wings, but he also gave us roots. I hope that as a member of the Beaver Dam Wall of Fame, he will not only inspire kids to follow that sense of adventure, but to cherish that sense of place. Jimmy? I'll pass the baton to you. Your family's very proud of you. All right. And know that James Campbell II is most certainly proud of you as well. So.
There's a lot of emotions tonight, but there's a lot of good reason for that. So, when I moved to Beaver Dam, there were a few names that were brought to my attention. The Campbell name, actually from your father, longtime Kiwanian, had the privilege of sitting down with him many a time. Didn't realize how talented you were until I heard countless stories of the class of the 1979 football champions. So as the high school principal here, I got to hear that quite a bit. But I just want to thank you on behalf of the school district, the Wall of Fame committee, for not only being an outstanding student while you were here and a supremely talented individual, but being a great father, a great son, a great talent, and sharing that with everybody that you've had the opportunity to come in contact with to help their lives be better and make a positive impact on this world. So thank you so much, and congratulations on being this year's outstanding alumni.
Thank you. Oh man, I got weepy eyes. And following a weepy man in pink high tops is it's a tough act to follow. And then my brother and Steve. Well, anyway, thank you all for coming. I'm honored and flattered and very, very grateful. I don't know how many of you remember the scene from The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, but Huck and Tom and Joe, Mark Twain called them Injun Joe, are hiding in the balcony of the church while they're being eulogized. And they can't believe all the amazing things that are being said about them. Well, I feel like that today. I'm flattered and grateful and honored, but also a bit overwhelmed. So first of all, I'd like to thank the committee. I know you probably had a lot of very qualified applicants, and I know that you've given the award to a lot of people with very remarkable careers in the past, so I thank you very much for that. I'd like to thank Mary Postuma. Mary, I must have sent her 100 emails in preparation for this, but she was friendly and reliable and always patient, so thank you very much, Mary. I'd like to thank Steve Kinsey, who I understand hatched this idea last fall. Steve does so much for the Hall of Fame, and he goes above and beyond the duty. So Steve, thank you. I'd like to thank Jeff also for the introduction, and Jeff rode herd on this, and I think he assembled all the material for my daughters, which I understand was not a very easy task. Like most young people, they're very, very hard to reach. But I also want to thank Jeff for being shoot. You set a terrible example of a for being a fellow adventurer excuse me. Way back in 1989, I was working in Chicago, was eager to get out, and Jeff had just graduated from high school, and we had grown up watching National Geographic videos, and we wanted to go off on a young man's adventure. And we were either going to build a raft and float down the Amazon, or we were going to go to Papua New Guinea. Well, we chose to go to Papua New Guinea, and I think it changed my life, and I think it changed Jeff's life. We fell in love with the place, as remote a place as you can get on the planet Earth, and the people, and the culture, and the landscape. And it was, for me, the beginning of a long history with Papua New Guinea. I'd like to thank Beaver Dam High School and my coaches and teachers. Hey, it was a great place to go to high school, a really great place. And we had a lot of people who believed in us, and that's a special thing. Okay, I'm gonna collect myself here for a moment. I'd like to thank my mom for 93 years of worrying. When Jeff and I went off to New Guinea in 1989, we were out of touch for 5 weeks. And mind you, we weren't just backpacking in Europe, which is a great thing, but we were in the middle of, as I said, one of the most remote places in the world. And I know that my mother didn't have one decent night of sleep. I'd also like to thank her for introducing us to literature and books. If you go visit my mom during the week, she will either be knitting or crocheting or reading, usually a classic, anything from Toni Morrison to Thomas Mann, but she is always reading. She also, by the way, hoped that we would love opera. That one didn't stick. And I think it's one of her great regrets. I'd also like to thank her and my dad, who is no longer with us, for teaching us about hard work. People think that writing books and making TV is about being creative and about inspiration. It is. But the muse is a fickle friend, and when the muse is not around, all you have are discipline and the lessons and hard work that you've learned all of your life. And I learned those from my mom and dad. And my dad was also a great storyteller. And he taught us to love stories. And he was a psychologist. That was his profession. But at heart, he was always a farm boy. And growing up, we listened to his stories, and I'm sure they had a profound effect on me. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons that I love to tell stories. I'd also like to thank my wife, who was here earlier but is in class tonight, for sticking with me through feast and famine, prosperity and poverty, and being the significant other of a freelance writer and TV producer is a tough role. But Elizabeth has handled it with grace and equanimity, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. It's an uncertain kind of life. Often there's one check during the year, and that's it. So it's very, very tough, to create any kind of budget. But she is stuck by me. She is also my fellow adventurer. She can out-hike, out-ski, out-bike me any day of the week. And by the way, in 1995, she went to New Guinea for her honeymoon. We traveled around the world, and I begged her to go to Papua New Guinea. By the way, Jeff joined us on our honeymoon. and we were on the Papua New Guinea side. We climbed the second highest mountain, and then Jeff left, and we went to the western side, which is now called Papua, and Elizabeth got malaria. And she was deathly sick, and I got her out by steamship to an island called Ternate of World War II fame, and we found the one doctor on the island, and he administered massive doses of chloroquine, and she eventually recovered. And I think her parents encouraged her at that point to think about annulling the marriage, but I think she was in it for the long haul. And I'd like to thank our daughters who, here I go again, who are one of my greatest gifts. And my middle daughter wrote something for me, and she said that it was when she turned 7, she realized that her dad didn't have a normal job, that he was gone a lot and home a lot. And it's true. I'd be gone for 2 or 3 months at a crack, and then I'd be home for 6 or 8 months. And being a freelancer, I set my own schedule. So I worked very early in the morning, and I got the girls up for school, and I read to them in the morning. I made their breakfast. I did their hair. I took them to school, and I went to all their sporting and school events. And I will never, ever regret that. So what I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about, I could go on a long time, but I don't want to impose upon you, but a little bit about my career as a writer and a TV producer. My second book is called The Ghost Mountain Boys. And actually, my third book is called Braving It. It's about 3 trips my 15-year-old daughter and I made to the remote Arctic. And my mom, when I was writing the book, introduced me to 2 German words. One was Heimweh and one was Fernweh. And Heimweh means, and only the Germans could create words for these, kind of inexpressible emotions. But Heimweh means a longing for home, and Fernweh means a longing for far-flung places. Well, many of you might recognize that. They were always 2 very powerful emotions in my life. And I really believe that my rootedness or my sense of my place in the world allowed me to do the kind of traveling that I love. My buddies think that my career is actually a ruse. They think that it's merely justification for an insatiable desire to travel. That I just say I'm writing books and say I'm making TV just so I can go off. And I imagine there's an element of truth to that. But the real reason is that, well, I feel, for one, I think that allows me to get at the essence of the story, and not only the essence of the story, but the essence of my characters and the essence of the land, which always plays a big role in not only my books and articles, but also my TV. So what I'd like to do today is I'd like to, if I remember how to do this, show you a 9-minute video of my second book called The Ghost Mountain Boys. The Ghost Mountain Boys was a book about 1,100 U.S. soldiers, largely from the Midwest, from Wisconsin and Michigan, from the 32nd Red Arrow Division, who were ordered by General MacArthur to hike across New Guinea before they met the Japanese in combat. And most of these men were 18, 19, 20 years old, from small towns in Michigan and Wisconsin, and here they were in the middle of the New Guinea jungle, completely ill-equipped for what they were about to encounter. It took them 42 days to hike the 140 miles, and when they got to the front, they were physically shattered by the experience. Men had lost a third of their body weight on the hike, yet they were sent directly into battle. In 2005, I went to New Guinea to see if it was possible to retrace that trail. And everybody told me, or most of the people that I inquired with discouraged me from trying to do it. But there were 2 people who said, yeah, I think it's doable. So I put together an expedition team in 2006, and we retraced their route, and was the hardest thing that I've ever done. I'd trained for 6 months before the trek, and a month before I left, I fell and I tore up my knee. And we were so deep in it by that point that I decided to go on with the expedition. On the first day of that expedition, I fell down the mountain and re-injured my knee. And I walked out of the jungle, got a vehicle back to Port Moresby, which is the capital of Papua New Guinea, got painkillers, and then was helicoptered back out. It took us 27 days to do that trail, and as I said, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. But the one point I want to make before showing you the video is that when we finished the trail, we got to celebrate. When these men, the Ghost Mountain Boys, finished the trail, they went directly into battle. So I am in no way equating what we did with what they did. So this is 9 minutes long. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, wrong one. Got it.
We're not walking out.
Okay.
Weka buna beka na la juedwa ni ka na la juedwa Sirika buna be kubana la juedwa kubana la juedwa kubana la juedwa juedwa merorani juedwa merorani In
a journey that strained the limits of endurance, James Campbell has rediscovered a nearly forgotten chapter of World War II bravery and suffering. In 2006, the author and adventurer began an extraordinary quest to retrace the path of an American infantry battalion sent on an impossible mission. The soldiers were ordered to march 120 miles over the uncharted mountains of New Guinea. Their journey has been described as one of the cruelest in modern military history. Many of them National Guardsmen from the Midwest, they would endure an incredible test of survival before they even entered combat. Starting from their coastal camp, the soldiers slashed their way through the jungle to a 9,000-foot peak that the natives said was haunted. The soldiers called it Ghost Mountain, and they would become known as the Ghost Mountain Boys.
Well, Ghost Mountain, we walked over to Ghost Mountain.
There wasn't a bug, a fly, or nothing. There was no birds. It was just weird. It was eerie.
As we went along, and of course, the more burdensome you got, the tired you got, well, you start shedding stuff. And I think when we went over to Ghost Mountain is when I shed everything I had.
And those natives would go over it because I think they had, they couldn't go but just so far.
Malaria, dysentery, jungle rot, trench foots, and hunger plagued them. And on the other side of the mountains, elite troops of the Japanese Empire waited in their bunkers. The battles on the beaches and in the swamps of New Guinea, sometimes fought hand to hand, were some of the most savage of the South Pacific War. That was 1942. More than a half-century later, Campbell began assembling his Ghost Mountain team.
Ghost Mountain.
Old friend and Chicago-based journalist George Hood agreed to take part, suggesting they collaborate on a documentary. Another friend, Dave Musgrave, a professor at the University of Alaska Fairbanks and an accomplished backpacker, also signed on.
I can't imagine doing this. Not knowing what's ahead, having dysentery, malaria, not having the right equipment.
Outside magazine photographer Philip Engelhorn became the team's fourth member.
Can I go home now?
German by birth, Engelhorn was based in Hong Kong.
I'm tired and I'm hungry.
Palm Productions of New Guinea provided a camera crew. The trail boss was Lee Ticehurst, an Australian living in New Guinea and an experienced jungle trekker.
Slingshots and spears and the dogs. The dogs are more important than anything else that you can hunt with. These dogs will not bark until they see the game. And then everybody knows it's on.
On a hot June day, from a high ridge overlooking the Mimani River, Campbell and his team began their journey. That first day, the expedition nearly collapsed when Campbell fell and re-injured a knee. He was forced to turn back. Tired and dehydrated, Hood also retreated.
We're feeling pretty exhausted. It's tortuous country. I'm 44 years old with a bad wheel. Thought I could do it, and it's a killer. We get 3 days in, we start failing, then what the heck do we do? Plus, we didn't want to slow down the entire group. Rather humiliating, as you might imagine.
The rest of the team went on. Back in Port Moresby, Campbell and Hood regrouped. 4 days later, they rejoined the team by helicopter, landing at a village called La Rooney. The team did not travel alone. As the American Army had done, the team hired carriers and guides from the villages along the route. Among them was Beirua. As a 7-year-old boy, too frightened to stay behind, Beirua followed his parents as they carried ammunition and supplies for the Americans. Now more than 70, he and his wife Bima would help guide Campbell and his team over Ghost Mountain. Beirua warned Campbell the mountain was haunted by Masalai, evil spirits and demons. Beirua told other stories and helped the team find those who knew or remembered the American soldiers.
Oh, Jesus, help me. Jesus, help me.
They saw that plane crash, and then the troops were moving. The American troops will start moving down to where the plane crashed.
Those tales have become part of the local folklore, passed down from generation to generation around village campfires. In 1942, the rugged interior of New Guinea was an unmapped wilderness. 64 years later, the team would discover an ecosystem and native people largely unchanged by the passage of time. New Guinea remains a land of no roads and long-forgotten villages, where hunters still use slingshots and spears and have little contacts with the outside world. After more than a month of suffering, the men of the Ghost Mountain Battalion reached the north coast of New Guinea. They went directly into battle, joined by the rest of their 32nd Infantry Division comrades. According to one historian, the combat was a knife fight out of the Stone Age. Though not on a military mission, Campbell's team pushed across New Guinea toward an important goal: to resurrect the story of the Ghost Mountain Boys. It became an ordeal the team could not have imagined, and one it will never forget.
Okay, thank you very much. I should get the Beaver Dam banner back, but sorry about that. Anyway, a lot of those men who were the Ghost Mountain Boys, I grew very, very close to. I ultimately interviewed maybe more than 50 of the men who made that march. And I tell you what, they suffered, and they were grateful that while I was writing and researching the book, that I would attempt something like this. So I grew very, very close to them, and I used to meet with them a lot. They used to call the house all the time. Stanley Yastrzemski would call the house and he'd say, "This is Stan the Man Yastrzemski from Muskegon, Michigan. That's JASTRZEMBSKI, Yastrzemski." And they were wonderful, wonderful men. Unfortunately, they're all gone now. But my first meeting with them was at Fort McCoy, and they had the 32nd Division Old Timers meeting there. And I was sitting on the end of my bunk, and there was a big circle of men talking. They were in their 80s and some of them in their early 90s, as older people do. I'm one of those. They start talking about their ailments. And one fella had just had a heart attack and bypass surgery. Another had just had a stroke. One was suffering from he had no feeling in his hands and feet. And the oldest guy in the group, he had big Coke bottle glasses, and he probably weighed no more than 90 pounds. His name was Don Stout, and he was from Milwaukee. And he said, "Oh, all you young guys complaining about your ailments," he said, "when I leave this earth," he said, you want to know how I want to go out?" And they all said, "All right, Don, how do you want to go out?" He said, "I don't want to have a heart attack. I don't want to have a stroke." He said, "When I leave this earth, I want to be shot by an irate husband." So you can imagine what spending a week with these guys was like. It was one of the great joys of my life, listening to their bad polka music and their bad, and they're, bad jokes, and, well, anyway, it was a great experience. So I'm going to talk about two other books, and I'll keep it quick. My first book was a book called The Final Frontiersman, and that was about, I don't know if any of you have read it, but it was about my cousin Haimo Korth. By the way, Haimo Korth went up to Alaska in the 70s, and he didn't go to Fairbanks or Anchorage. He went to the remote Arctic Alaska, 120 miles north of the Arctic Circle, 100 miles from the nearest neighbor, and he raised a family there. And by the way, the adventure, genetic marker for adventure in our family is pretty prominent. But he still, to this day, lives more remotely than anybody in the state of Alaska. But I remember when he went up, I was a young man, actually I was 12, and I admired him so much, and I vowed then and there that when I came of age, I was going to do exactly the same thing. Well, when I came of age, I went east to New Haven, Connecticut. And no mountain man in the making ever goes to New Haven, Connecticut. So by writing the book, I got to live out a portion of my own dream. And I spent over the course of 2 years with him, I lived with him. And it was hard work. I lived in a little tent. They wouldn't let me live in the cabin. It was Haimo, his wife, and their 2 daughters. And so he put me off in a little wall tent with this tiny, tiny little wood stove, undependable wood stove. And at night it would get 40 below. That was not remarkable. It was 30, 40, even colder than that below every single night. And I froze up there for the entire winter. And then I hunted with Haimo. We packed out moose, we packed out caribou, and it was really, really hard work. But it was something I loved. As I said, had been a dream of mine, and a dream I never fulfilled. So I got the opportunity to do it by writing that book. And ultimately, as it was said, that book was made into a television series called The Last Alaskans, and I was an executive producer for the show. And my role was to write the stories, to write the storylines for the show and the various episodes. And I was able to do that because I had lived up there. I knew the cycle of their lives. I knew that in mid-January, the people were going to be elated because the sun, which they hadn't seen in 6 weeks, they'd finally see on January 18th. So the camera crews had to be up there on January 18th when the sun came back so they could see how giddy all these people were. So that was a really fulfilling experience for me, and that show ultimately was nominated for 2 Emmys. Unfortunately, Discovery Channel it was a surprise when they canceled the show because the show was still quite strong. So it was a surprise and a disappointment. I loved Alaska so much that I wanted my daughter to see it. By the way, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Sorry about that. Something I neglected to mention is that in 2018, I took my middle daughter to Papua New Guinea, and we walked the entirety of the Ghost Mountain Trail. She was 15 years old, and that's a pretty humbling experience when your 15-year-old daughter can out-hike you. But we started a charity for the people along the trail, the native Papua New Guineans who helped the soldiers so much have never been thanked by the United States government for their service, unlike, say, the Philippine Scouts. So we have established a healthcare center along the trail where people are dying of cuts, where women are dying in childbirth. So we started the first healthcare along that trail, and we also started the first trekking company, which is now a native-owned and operated trekking company, which can take adventure trekkers and historians now on that trail. So that was something I wanted to mention, so forgive me for the backtrack. But now on to braving it. So I took my daughter on 3 trips up to Arctic Alaska. On the first trip, we built a cabin for Hymo, and it was the worst bug season in the Arctic in 30 years. Plastered on the Fairbanks News Miner was worst bug season in the Alaskan bush in 30 years. And we were building a cabin at that time. We built smudge fires every day to keep the mosquitoes away, but it didn't work, and it was really, really hard work. And my daughter, who was at 15, her job was to peel poles. And so she sat there with her head net on, peeling poles all day. And then we went up in winter. We made a winter trip. So I wanted my daughter to experience winter in the Arctic. And our third trip was kind of the culmination of everything. On our third trip, we backpacked over the Brooks Range and we canoed out to the Arctic Ocean. And when we got to the Arctic Ocean, we went to a barrier island called Airy Island. And we couldn't wait. We'd been on the trail and on the river for 28 days. It was supposed to be a warm summer in the Arctic. In fact, the first day, my daughter was hiking and she had on a shirt that said California Girl. And the next morning, she put it out to dry in the sun, and the next morning we woke up to 5 inches of snow, and her California Girl t-shirt was solid, was frozen solid. And then when we got to the river, to canoe the river, it was supposed to be a Class 2 or Class 3 river, and we encountered a river that was Class 3 or Class 4, and that challenged us in ways I can't even describe. But when we got to this barrier island called Airy Island, we were elated. We thought, finally, we get to go back to civilization. So I called on a sat phone our Inupiat captain, and he said, there's a big storm coming in. You're going to be on the island for at least 5 to 7 days. So we were trapped on that island by a storm, and we were trapped on that island with a polar bear. And along the way, we'd seen lots and lots of grizzlies, and the grizzlies always ran. The grizzlies, and the only thing you really have to worry about as a grizzly is a sow with cubs or a bear sitting on a kill. But in this case, the grizzlies all ran, but the polar bear did not run. The polar bear became increasingly more inquisitive and increasingly more aggressive. One day, my daughter and I were down on the ocean, and she was picking out pretty rocks for her sisters. And all of a sudden, I looked, and I saw this polar bear walking down the beach. And I said to my daughter, Aiden, I want you to get up very, very slowly. And she said, why, Dad? And I said, because, Aiden, there's a polar bear approaching us. And she looked at it. And then we slowly backed away, and we were talking to the polar bear as we had talked to the grizzlies, saying, we don't mean you no harm. We're just here. We're just passing through. Everything's going to be okay. So we eventually backed up, and the polar bear, fortunately, did not attack us. But that night in the tent, I asked Aiden, I said, Aiden, you didn't seem very worried about the polar bear. Why was it? And she said, Dad, were you frightened? I said, yeah, I was terrified. And I said, but you didn't seem very scared. And she said, Dad, I have to confess something. And I said, what's that? She said, well, the truth is I figured I only had to be faster than one person. So my daughter was going to give me up to the polar bear. Anyway, I'll show you a quick video that I use for my book talks. When we do the Braving It thing, and then I'll make a few concluding remarks, and then you can all go. Let's see. There's the, okay. No.
You're going through some of the most magnificent wilderness on the face of the planet, but there are also great dangers. There were many times I wondered, what have I done? You know, is this irresponsible? Should I have brought my daughter up here? When we were on the river, on the Hula Hula River, she was the bowman in the canoe. And the bowman picks the line on the river and dictates the strokes.
So my dad had told me what my job would be beforehand. So when I was going through, I was, giving small suggestions, and I kind of meekly say, well, I think pedal on the left. But I was still, most of my trust was in my dad to tell me what to do. And he tried yelling over the rapids and, Aiden, do this, do that, over the roar of the river. I couldn't hear anything. My eyes were, and my instincts were telling me to go one way. He was telling me to go the other, and it was just a disaster. The next morning I said, Dad, you're gonna have to trust me. I'm not gonna get all of them right, and I didn't, but I know what I see. I learned to shut up and to trust her, and that was incredibly hard. It was a complete role reversal. Every parent grapples with the conflict between kind of loving their children, and letting that kid go. That's the hardest thing in the world to do. And so I did get some things wrong, but I improved, and by the end I was shouting back to him, and I was the boss of the canoe, and he was taking my orders. It was actually a little bit fun too. I mean, to get the chance to yell at your dad is you don't often get that chance.
Well, thank you all. I really appreciate it. I'm going to do one shameless pitch. We have a new show, a new documentary, 3-episode documentary series that's appearing on Netflix. It's called Gold and Greed. It's about this eccentric millionaire from Santa Fe, New Mexico, who hid a treasure chest of gold coins and jewels in the Rocky Mountains. And he wrote a poem that people could use to decipher where it was. And he said it is somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. And he wanted to get people away from their telephones and away from their computers. And he started the largest treasure hunt in American history. 500 people participated in it. So if you get a chance, watch Gold and Greed. All right, thank you very much for your patience and your interest. I really appreciate it. And again, to the committee, thank you so much. I'm grateful and honored.
How about one more round of applause for our recipients, our award recipients tonight, James Campbell, Chuck and Jeannie Stungle down here. Give them a round of applause. And as we start to wrap up our program here, some additional thank yous need to be made. I want to thank, how about a nice round of applause for our presenters, Carol, Steve, and Jeff. Can you give them a round of applause, please? We thank them for their kind words tonight. I want to thank Taher Food Service for the reception out in the lobby. Give them a round of applause. Can I ask anybody who's on the Wall of Fame committee that's in attendance, please stand and be recognized, would you please? We have several folks here. Yep, there we go. Thank you so much for all of you. I too would like to thank Mary Postuma because about a week and a half ago, I got a phone call asking if I could be the MC for tonight. Apparently there was another person who had another commitment, had to back out, and I didn't have a lot of time to get ready for this. I was in Texas for the last week and stepped off an airplane in Milwaukee about 8:30 last night. So Mary was able to email me what I needed and get me ready in a very short amount of time. So Mary, thank you very much for that. I really appreciate that. I was honored to be your second choice. I was. And as we wrap it up here, just want to make one announcement, is that photos are going to be taken at the Wall of Fame display just outside the auditorium here. So don't go too far. We'll get some photo opportunities out there with our award winners. With that, I think that will conclude our program for this evening. Again, congratulations to our award recipients, and I bid you all a very pleasant good evening. Thank you.